You know, this week marked 2 years since the finance bill protests here in Kenya happened. And I found myself thinking about something that had nothing to do with politics, really. It had to do with taxes. Not because I enjoy talking about taxation, but because taxation only really works when people trust the relationship between their taxes and the government at hand. You see, a lot of us are willing and open to contribute when we believe the relationship is fair, when we believe what we're giving to the government is being transformed into something that serves everyone. Roads, schools, hospitals, public services, healthcare. I think taxes become easier to carry when people feel they're participating in something larger than themselves. Call it the greater good. But at the same time, I believe the frustration usually begins when the contribution starts to feel less like participation and more like extraction. When the government expects you to give more, but they return less. And eventually, as a taxpayer, you stop questioning the amount that you're paying and start questioning the relationship itself. Like, where the hell do my taxes go? And while I was thinking about that, another idea surfaced for me. I started to wonder, does this dynamic exist outside of government? Not from a political standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. Because what I realized and came to see was every relationship has its own economy. Not just for money, but the time that you put in, the attention that you put in, the sacrifice, the care, the trust, everything. And a lot of healthy relationships usually don't feel transactional because in a healthy dynamic, things naturally just move between people. Some days, one person will carry more than the other, and other days, the other person does. And the exchange isn't perfectly balanced every day, but over time, it feels reciprocal. It feels as though I'm here to give and the other person is there to give as well. And I pivoted to start thinking about something many of us have grown up around, but rarely examine closely or talk about. The expectation that one day, after you've built something for yourself, your life quietly becomes responsible for sustaining someone else's. Many communities refer to this as the black tax. The term itself doesn't really interest me as much, but the relationship behind it does. I don't believe there's anything inherently wrong with wanting to care for your parents. In fact, my prayer is that God grants me the blessings and the ability to do so. Because a lot of us are in the positions that we are because of how much our parents sacrificed opportunities, comfort, and sometimes entire versions of their own lives so that ours could be different. And for me, That is what I consider the purest form of love. The consideration of I'm not going to give myself something so that the next person can have something for themselves. And from that relationship, you find that love naturally wants to give back. But that's not where the tension lives. I genuinely think the tension begins when love slowly becomes measured by provision. When the gratitude that was once felt quietly starts becoming expectation. And in this process, helping no longer feels like generosity. It starts to feel like obligation, like you have to do it. And somewhere along the way, that relationship changes. The parent child relationship will change because the parent will grow older and the children will grow older too. It's inevitable. Time is the one thing you cannot beat. Father Time is undefeated. But as that happens, you begin feeling like there's an infrastructure building. And that's such a difficult sentence to say because I genuinely understand my parents' side too. You know, many parents are not asking or hoping to receive because they're greedy. They're asking because the sacrifices that they made impacted their retirement. Because the world that we live in today, healthcare is expensive. Because the plans that they had for us as older kids and for themselves as older parents, inflation has outpaced preparation. And because the world that they prepared for is no longer the world that we, their children, inherited. And that pains my soul. Because we all know that our parents deserve the best of the best. At the same time, many sons and daughters my age, younger, old, are not feeling a pulling away dynamic from their families and their parents because they don't care. They're trying to survive too. You know, our generation is building lives in economies that look nothing like the ones our parents entered. The cost of housing is different. Careers are different. Migration has essentially changed what a family even looks like. You get siblings that grow up in different countries now, parents that live in different countries, families that are so fragmented that the only memories they have is the conversations they had at the dinner table 15 to 20 years ago. And many of us are trying to support parents while simultaneously trying to become financially stable ourselves. This is happening in a generation that has braced itself in the worst comparison era of all time with the invention of social media. You see, growing up, you only knew what car your neighbor had. But now, I can literally log in, look at my feed, and I can see somebody from Switzerland with that dream car that's younger than me. And the repercussions on your confidence level from that experience is exponential because you're repeatedly exposed to this every single day. But nobody is necessarily wrong, in my opinion, which is precisely why these conversations are so painful and perhaps why so many families avoid having them all together. Instead, a lot of us have resentment that quietly fills the silence. The child feels guilty, the parents feel abandoned. At the end, both feel unseen. I've realized that, the problem is not sacrifice because healthy relationships have always required sacrifice. The problem is when sacrifice becomes the only language the relationship knows how to speak. Because eventually every relationship arrives at the same uncomfortable question. If I removed what I provide, what would remain between us? That's a frightening question, but I think it's an honest one. Because I wonder how many relationships have quietly become transactional without anyone intending them to be that way. How many conversations just quietly become invoices? How many phone calls become requests to the point where nobody wants to talk on the phone anymore? And how many acts of love slowly become recurring obligations? Maybe this isn't just a conversation about families. Maybe it's about every relationship we build. If I look around, everything has a relationship with something. Governments, employers, partners, friends, parents, children, and every relationship has its own economy. But the healthiest ones aren't built on keeping score. They're built on trust. Because trust is what transforms contribution into generosity. Without it, even love can begin to feel like taxation. So this week, I wanted you to reflect on this question. Is there a relationship in your life that has quietly become more transactional than relational? And if every expectation disappeared tomorrow, what would still remain between you and the other person? This was your weekly reset. I hope you can all read, reflect, and rise. See you guys in the next one.